My name is Lila. I paid for my brother's entire wedding. The venue deposit, the catering, the florals, the honeymoon hotel block. And when I walked through the doors of the Whitmore house in Savannah on the evening of June 7th, the first thing the event coordinator told me, in a voice low enough to be a whisper and loud enough to be a verdict, was that the seating had already been finalized. Table 14, near the kitchen. My name, the name on the credit card that had paid for every chair in that room, was nowhere near the family table. And when I found my mother afterward and told her, she patted my hand and said, "Don't make tonight about you, sweetheart." That was the moment something quietly cracked inside me. Not broke, cracked. Like ice that looks solid until you step on it the wrong way. I want to tell you what happened next. Keep watching. I had driven 4 hours from Charlotte that morning. Left before the sun finished rising, stopped once for gas and a coffee I didn't finish, arrived at the venue by 2 in the afternoon town to make sure the centerpieces were in place. The ones I had personally approved after 3 rounds of emails with the florist. White garden roses and trailing eucalyptus. $240 per table. 12 tables, not counting the sweetheart table, which I had also paid for. I wore a sage green wrap dress. Not the one I had bought first, which was a shade brighter. My sister-in-law had texted me 3 weeks before the wedding, asked me not to wear anything that would compete with the bridesmaids. I had looked at the text for a long moment and then responded, "Of course." I put the first dress back in the closet. The Whitmore house was beautiful in the late afternoon light. Spanish moss hanging off the oaks lining the driveway. The ceremony had already ended. I had watched it from a pew in the 3rd row, which I had thought was fine. I understood hierarchy. I am my brother's sister, not his parent. What I did not understand was that by the time cocktail hour ended and the doors to the reception hall opened, the hierarchy had been reorganized into something I had not agreed to. The event coordinator, who had my cell number saved from 7 months of planning calls, found me by the bar. She had the look of someone delivering news she didn't write. "Your seating card is at table 14, she said quietly, and then added, "Your sister-in-law made some last-minute adjustments yesterday. I wanted you to know I had nothing to do with it." I thanked her. I didn't cry. I walked to table 14, which was near the kitchen door, which meant I would spend the next 3 hours breathing in waves of warm bread and hearing the muffled crash of catering carts every time someone pushed through the swinging door. The table seated 8. I knew none of them. 2 couples from the groom's side, which was my brother's side, which was supposed to be my side, who greeted me with polite indifference. A college friend of my sister-in-law's who spent most of dinner on her phone. A man who said he worked in insurance and asked if I was also from out of town. I said yes. I said I was from Charlotte. I didn't say I was the one who had written the check. At some point in the evening, my brother found me during a lull in the dancing. He put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Hey, you good?" I said yes. He said, "She just wanted the family table to feel intimate. You get it, right?" I looked at him for a second longer than was comfortable. Then I said, "Sure." He nodded, relieved, and went back to the dance floor. I got it. My mother came by once. She was flushed and happy, her hair curled for the occasion, earrings I had given her for her birthday, 2 years ago, catching the chandelier light. She sat across from me for about 4 minutes, said the food was wonderful, asked if I'd tried the salmon, and then was pulled away by someone who wanted a photo. She didn't look back. I drove back to my hotel alone. Not the room block I had reserved for out-of-town guests that had filled up. And somehow the room I had assumed was held for me had been released. I stayed at a courtyard 15 minutes away. I didn't cry there either. I took off the sage green dress, hung it over the bathroom door, and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. My phone buzzed. A bank notification. The kind that hits your lock screen with a quiet urgency that has nothing to do with whatever you're currently feeling, but demands attention anyway. New account alert. Credit card opened in your name. Issuing bank. Pinnacle Rewards. Current balance, $4,200. I stared at the screen. Read it twice. Then a third time, the way you reread something, not because you misunderstood it, but because you need your brain to catch up to what your eyes already know. I hadn't opened a credit card with Pinnacle Rewards. I didn't know what Pinnacle Rewards was. I opened my banking app. Then I pulled up my full credit report. I hadn't checked it in almost a year, not because I was irresponsible, but because I had good credit and I trusted it the way you trust a lock on a door in a neighborhood you've always felt safe in. I scrolled. My student loans, my car, my apartment, all familiar. And then unfamiliar. A personal loan, issued in March 2021. 32 months ago. Amount, $19,500. Purpose listed, home improvement. Mailing address on the account, my parents' house in Fayetteville. I sat with that number for a long time, 19,500. I had never taken a personal loan. I had never needed one. I was a financial analyst. I understood debt. I avoided it deliberately. Home improvement, March 2021. I knew what had happened in March 2021. My brother had moved into his apartment with my sister-in-law. I remembered because he had called me, excited, said they'd found a place, but it needed work. New floors, a kitchen refresh, a bathroom renovation. He had mentioned, casually, offhandedly, in the way people mention things they've already decided, that it was going to cost more than they had. I had offered to help with a few $100s. He had said, no, we'll figure it out. They figured it out with my credit score and my social security number. My chest didn't tighten. My hands didn't shake. It was stranger than that. It was like standing in a room where someone has rearranged all the furniture and you keep almost running into things because the space is the same, but nothing is where you put it. I reached for the legal pad I always travel with. Old habit, from work, and I wrote the number at the top, $19,500. Below it, Pinnacle Rewards card, $4,200. I drew a line underneath and wrote, total unauthorized, $23,700. Then I kept digging. I stayed up until nearly 3 a.m, cross-referencing dates, pulling statements, building a picture that had been assembling itself in the background of my life, without my knowledge. There were charges on the Pinnacle card, the one opened in my name, that told a clear story. A furniture store in Fayetteville. A home goods retailer. A specialty kitchen appliance shop. The dates clustered around late 2021 and early 2022, right when my brother and sister-in-law had finished the renovation and started posting pictures. I had visited that apartment. I had complimented the floors. I had complimented my own debt. I opened a new document on my laptop and titled it simply, Evidence. Not for drama, not out of anger, because I work in finance and I know that feelings don't hold up in court, facts do. In the morning, I drove home to Charlotte. No music. The highway unspooled through the Georgia pines and I let my thoughts run wherever they chose. I kept returning to a phone call from 2 years ago. A woman from a financial services office who had called to confirm information on a loan application. I had told her she had the wrong number. She had apologized and hung up. I had forgotten about it by the end of the day. She hadn't had the wrong number. Back in Charlotte, I didn't unpack my bag. I made coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and opened the full credit file I had downloaded the night before. I was looking for the next thing. The kind of thing you look for when you've already found enough to know there is more. I found it on page 4, a co-signature on a student loan issued under my name. My sister-in-law was listed as the primary borrower. The loan was for a medical billing certificate program at a community college in Fayetteville. She had started the program in fall 2022 and left after 1 semester. The loan remained. Balance at withdrawal, $600 to $800. Status, deferred. I don't co-sign loans. I have had a strict rule about it since watching a colleague have her credit destroyed by an ex-boyfriend's defaulted car note. I had told my family this, specifically at a dinner table, when the topic of a loan for another relative came up, and my mother said it would be a nice gesture. I had said clearly, I don't co-sign, ever. So someone had signed for me. I called the community college's financial aid office and identified myself. I asked carefully whether there was a phone verification on record for the co-signature confirmation. The woman on the line said those calls were recorded for compliance. I asked if I could request a transcript under my own name. She said I could submit a written request and receive it within 10 business days. I submitted the request that afternoon. 11 days later, the transcript arrived in my inbox. I poured a glass of water before opening it. Then I read it. The voice on the recording, confirming my identity, confirming my willingness to co-sign, answering the security questions, was not mine. The rhythm was wrong. The pauses fell in the wrong places. The way it said, "Yes, that's correct," was a phrase I never use. I say "that's right," or just "yes." I noticed this the way you notice something about yourself that other people wouldn't catch. But there was something else in the transcript. I didn't need to compare to my own speech patterns. The representative had asked for the signer's date of birth. The voice answered correctly. Then the representative asked for the last 4 digits of my social security number. The voice paused. A short pause. Maybe 2 seconds. The kind of pause someone makes when they're recalling something memorized, rather than something they know the way they know their own heartbeat. It was my mother. I had known her voice for 32 years. I knew the small inhale she made before speaking when she was gathering herself. I knew the way she softened her consonants when she was trying to sound formal. It was her. She had not merely watched them use my name. She had participated. She had picked up a phone, answered security questions. She had memorized from documents she was never supposed to have and spoken as me, while I was somewhere else, paying for something else, being useful in whatever way was needed. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. The city made its usual sounds outside. Someone mowing a lawn down the street. A dog, barking twice and then stopping. Life moving in its ordinary direction while mine processed something that would take longer than one afternoon to fully absorb. I didn't call her, not yet. Instead, I opened a new tab and searched, how to report identity theft within a family. I found the FTC website. I found Legal Aid of North Carolina. I downloaded the identity theft affidavit and saved it to my desktop. I created a folder, Family Financial Documentation. Inside, the credit report, the loan transcript, the Pinnacle card statement, the personal loan record, screenshots of dates, a timeline I built in a spreadsheet, because spreadsheets are the language I am most fluent in, and fluency matters when everything else feels uncertain. At the top of the spreadsheet, in cell A1, I typed, "They assumed I would never look closely enough." That was no longer true. I did not confront anyone for 2 weeks. I used those 2 weeks to finish the picture. I pulled every credit account. I requested transaction histories. I filed an initial fraud notice with all 3 credit bureaus. During those 2 weeks, my phone continued to function as though nothing had happened. My mother sent me a photo of herself and my brother from the wedding. My sister-in-law posted on Instagram, "Best day of my life, surrounded by love." I was not tagged. I appeared in none of the photos, even the ones taken near me. My brother texted once, "Hey, thanks again for everything with the wedding." I didn't respond immediately. When I did, 4 days later I wrote, "Of course." 2 words, no punctuation. He sent back a thumbs-up emoji. In the second week, I found one more thing. My grandmother had passed 3 years ago. Her estate had included a small property in Fayetteville and a savings account. I had been named in the original will. I had been present when it was drafted, had signed a witness form, remembered the conversation clearly. But I had never been contacted when the estate closed. At the time, I assumed there was little left once debts were settled. I had not thought to verify. I contacted the probate court in Cumberland County. The estate had closed 18 months ago. The property had sold. The savings account had been distributed. The distribution went to 2 beneficiaries, my mother and my brother. The notification letters had been sent to the addresses on file. My address on file was my parents' house in Fayetteville, not my apartment in Charlotte, an address I had not lived at in 8 years. Someone had never updated it, or had updated it intentionally, to a place where only one person sorted the mail. The letters had gone to my mother's house. My mother had received them. No one had told me. I added the line to the spreadsheet, estate correspondence rerouted, distribution excluded. I underlined it once. Then I closed the laptop. 3 weeks after the wedding, I drove to Fayetteville. I didn't call ahead. I wore jeans and a plain white shirt. I brought a black folder, the same one I use for client presentations, because I wanted it to feel like the professional matter it was. My mother was in the kitchen when I walked in, sorting mail at the counter. Her face did what it always did when I arrived. A soft, genuine light of pleasure. She was glad to see me. She was also capable of everything she had done. I had spent years believing these two things could not exist in the same person. They can. That's what makes it complicated. That's also what makes it a choice. Lila, she said, this is a surprise. Not really, I said. I placed the folder on the kitchen table. She looked at it. She didn't move toward it. Sit down, I said, not unkindly, evenly. She sat. I opened the folder and pulled the first tab. This is a personal loan issued in March 2021 under my Social Security number, I said. $19,500. The address on the account is this house. I didn't take this loan. She opened her mouth. Let me finish, I said. I pulled the second tab. This is a credit card opened in my name. Balance of $4,200. Charges at furniture and home goods stores in Fayetteville. Dates match exactly when my brother was renovating his apartment. I set it down. I didn't open this card. Third tab. This is a transcript of a recorded phone verification call for a student loan co-signature in my name. I slid it across the table. The voice on this call is yours. The silence in the kitchen had weight. The refrigerator hummed. The wind chime on the back porch, the one I had brought her from a market in Asheville 2 summers ago, made a small sound in whatever breeze was passing through. Lila, she started, we were going to. Going to what? I asked. Pay it back, when things settled. Things have not settled, I said. And I have a legal aid consultation on Monday and an FTC report already on file. Something shifted in her face. The warmth didn't disappear entirely, but it rearranged itself into something older and more tired. You don't need to do that, she said. I already did. Your brother used my credit to fund his renovation, I said. And you helped him by impersonating me on a recorded phone call. I'm not asking for your explanation. I'm telling you what happens next. I closed the folder. I've frozen my credit. The initial fraud report is filed. On Monday, I'll review with my attorney what comes after that. If any new accounts appear in my name, I escalate immediately. I don't want to do this to you. But you made a decision the morning you picked up that phone and rehearsed my answers. Now I'm making mine. She was quiet for a long moment. Then very softly, she said, we never thought you'd find out. She meant it as an explanation. It landed as a confession. I know, I said. I picked up the folder and walked to the door. Then I turned back, because there was one more thing that needed to be said, and I wanted to say it calmly, and only once. I drove 4 hours to that wedding, I said. I spent 7 months planning it. I wrote checks I didn't have to write because he's my brother and I love him. And I sat at table 14, near the kitchen, and breathed in exhaust and told myself it was fine. Because that's what I do. That's what I have always done. I held her gaze. I'm done doing it. I drove back to Charlotte in the dark, radio off, windows up. The highway through the pines was quiet, and I let it be quiet. For the first time in a long while, the silence felt like something I had chosen. That night, I opened the family group chat. I composed one message, no preamble, no explanation. I attached a spreadsheet. The message read, for your reference, a summary of financial contributions and unauthorized accounts opened in my name over the past 4 years, currently under legal review. Total, $29,700. I hit send. The read receipts appeared within minutes. My mother first, then my brother. Then, 30 seconds later, my sister-in-law, which meant he had shown her immediately, or she had been waiting. 40 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a private message from her. You're doing this out of jealousy. You couldn't let us have one good thing without making it about you. Think about what you're destroying. I read it twice. Then I typed back. I'm not destroying anything. I'm documenting it. I put my phone face down and did not look at it again that night. The legal process moved on its own timeline. The personal loan was flagged for investigation. The Pinnacle card account was disputed. My credit score, which had taken the hit, began slowly recovering. The estate question was more complicated and may remain so. Some things are harder to retrieve than others, and I made a kind of peace with not getting everything back. What I wanted back more than money was the use of my own name, and that I could reclaim. My brother called once, about 6 weeks later. He did not apologize exactly. He said he hoped we could eventually talk. I said I hoped so too, and I meant it, because I have no interest in permanent war. I am interested in truth, and in what, if anything, can be built after it has been acknowledged. 3 months after the wedding, I accepted a position with a firm in Portland, Oregon. I had not been looking, exactly, but the opportunity arrived at the right moment, which is the only moment anything useful ever arrives. I gave notice, packed methodically, gave away furniture I didn't want to carry. The night before the moving truck came, I sat on the bare floor of my Charlotte apartment with a glass of wine and the journal I'd barely touched in 2 years, and I wrote. Not about the legal case, not about the spreadsheet. I wrote about a version of myself I was not angry at but was saying goodbye to. The one who sat at table 14 and said, "Sure," when asked if she understood. The one who drove 4 hours and wrote checks and approved the florals and believed, in some quiet, stubborn part of herself, that the people she loved would eventually act accordingly. She wasn't stupid, she was trusting. There's a difference, and the difference matters to me now in a way it didn't before. I wrote 2 sentences at the bottom of the page and drew a line under them. Being useful is not the same as being valued. I confused the two for a long time, and that confusion was expensive in ways that have nothing to do with money. Portland is cold and gray, and I like it. My apartment has a window that faces the West Hills, and in the evenings, the light does something particular to the Douglas firs that I have started to wait for, the way I used to wait for recognition that never quite arrived. My neighbor brought over soup when I moved in. Not as an occasion, just because she had made extra and thought I might want some. I stood in the doorway and received it and said thank you, and it struck me, quietly, almost sideways, how uncomplicated a kind gesture could be when it wasn't tangled up in debt. I think about the wedding sometimes. The eucalyptus centerpieces, the chandelier catching my mother's earrings, the way the kitchen door swung every few minutes at table 14 and let out a breath of warm air and noise. I don't think about it with bitterness anymore. I think about it the way you think about the last moment before something changed. Not wishing it had gone differently, just marking it. If something in this story felt familiar, if you have ever organized the thing you weren't invited to, or covered the cost of being forgotten, or discovered that the people who were supposed to protect your name were using it as a tool instead, I want you to know that what you're feeling is not paranoia, and it is not ingratitude. It is clarity, and clarity is how it starts. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And if any part of this story echoed something you've lived through, tell me that too. The most important thing I learned in this whole ordeal is that what looks like an isolated experience almost never is. I'm Lila. I used to be the good daughter, the reliable one, the one who showed up. Now I'm just myself in a city I chose, doing work I love, going home at the end of the day to a quiet that belongs to me. And finally, that is enough.